Okay, so the streetcar in Seattle. Now, for those that don't know, I'm going to plug this in so that you guys don't hear the. For those that don't know, Seattle is embarking on a streetcar situation, right? They have the South Lake Union streetcar, and that basically is to get people from Westlake pretty much into Amazon's territory. And that was the very first one that came up. That was the first one that was built. Okay. And at the time, people said, this is cool and all, but it's kind of like a point of nowhere. Like you're not really going far. So that's about 1.3 miles long. Okay. I'm just pulling up some stuff. Okay, just pulling up some stuff here so I can have it all ready to go, so I can just, put it out there. Hold on 1 second. Where is that? And so then after that, and supposedly Amazon paid a little bit for that. I think they paid for some of the streetcars in that process, right? And so there's this 1.3 mile section, South Lake Union, and it opened in 2007. Then on the other side is First Hill Streetcar. Now, First Hill Streetcar almost doubled. It's almost double the size of the South Lake Union. It's 2.5 miles long. It's got about 10 stops, and it connects Pioneer Square, Capitol Hill, and First Hill. And as it goes through, it connects Amtrak and Sounder train stations at the King Street station. King Street is right there basically in Chinatown. And it is kind of like the hub, or will be kind of their hub in Seattle. Westlake is one of them. But this is going to be another one, because as they expand the Link Light Rail system, that's going to be another big point of interest, right? Or point of importance. And so this line opened in 2016. So these two lines are separated because there is no connection between the two. Now, I don't understand why there's no connection between the two, and I don't understand why they didn't actually connect or build the city center connection after South Lake Union, but whatever. So it left a 1.3 mile gap. And that gap is critical because there's no way for you to get on one train and go to the other, one streetcar and go to the other. There's no way to do that. And some of the most important aspects of the city center connector is Pike Place Market. And also the new area that they cleared out that used to be the viaduct. And this is a very popular area, right? Very heavy with tourists and all that. And that part has not been connected. And again, I go back to what I said before. That was probably more important, in my opinion, than First Hill, because Pike Place Market is a heavyweight. That wasn't done. So then enter Jenny Durkin, the mayor of Seattle. 2018, she ordered the project to stop. Now, this is where the problem is. Because previous mayor had said, yeah, let's do this. Everybody was all for it. Let's do it. And at the time, it was scheduled to begin construction in 2018. With utility relocation started in 2017. It was going to be completed in 2020. So last year, this would have been completed, would have been done. Okay? Keep in mind, Seattle is extremely expensive. And you can just look at the home prices from 2018 to now, and you can see how things just bounced all the way up. Escalated. You're looking at a city that grew by 100,000 people in 10 years. that even Sound Transit, who's a little bit better than Seattle Department of Transportation, SDOT is building Seattle's streetcar system. Sound Transit builds their light rail line, the bigger one, right? To give you some confusion. So SDOT is horrible when it comes to building stuff. It's again, city governments don't know how to budget correctly, and things are way expensive. This project should not be as expensive as it is. And I'll go into why that is here in just a second. But regardless, so she looked at this, and it says that in 2017, the city accepted a $50 million federal grant for the project. In October 2017, members of the Seattle City Council debated canceling the project and reappropriating the funds for bus service. But no budget amendments were made, because some of these people have never created one job in their life, felt like this should be used for things that were going to be a Band-Aid. Taking even $200 million and putting it towards homelessness, which is what they wanted to do, was put this money towards homelessness, is not going to fix homelessness. It's not a money issue. It's a social issue. And until you can get people who are in programs and that they want to be in programs, and until you're able to allow the police to really do what they're supposed to do and hold the bad cops accountable, but don't punish the entire system, if you're able to allow the police to arrest people who are doing things wrong and have a court system that puts those people in jail and leave them there for an appropriate amount of time, then you can start to see some of these issues kind of correct themselves. You're never going to get rid of homelessness completely, but it would not be as bad as it is now, and the crime situation down there would not be as bad as it is now. But again, unfortunately, the wrong people get in office, and it doesn't matter the party, because both sides of the fence are horrible. When it comes to some of the people on both sides of the fence in terms of politicians are horrible. But people want to point on one side and say they're horrible people. They're bad at what they're doing, but both can be horrible. Because I can point out some cities that are in Republican areas that suck too. Just being honest. So, because it just takes one person, and typically there's one person in the city council in Seattle that is the biggest problem. So then enter Mayor Jenny Durkin. And people may not like what I have to say, but I said it a long time ago, and I got some thumbs downs for it. Early on, I used to say Jenny Durkin was not the person that should have been. I think I said this back in 2018. Should not have been mayor. She was elected, I think, because she would have been kind of the first female for Seattle. You don't just pick any female and say, there you go. You need to have someone that is a good leader. And I said, we've had plenty of female mayors here in Tacoma, a much smaller city, I get that. But they've done an excellent job. I understand Seattle's a much bigger situation, but there's been female mayors all over the country and governors that have done an amazing job. It's just that this particular one is not the one that should have been in charge of Seattle. But whatever. These are all my personal opinions. So she ordered an investigation of the project, and the construction halted for the duration of that review. This happened in March of 2018. They said it was going to take up to 3 months. Now keep in mind, I talk about even down in little old Tacoma, how home prices escalate every single month. And now back in 2018, Seattle was on a tear. There was nothing that Tacoma was doing in terms of price jumps that could compare to Seattle. It was ridiculous. You would see reports about Crane City. This was during that time. And in the wake of rising capital costs, it was estimated to leave a $23 million shortfall in an overall $200 million budget for building the line. Okay? Just $23 million. Now that's a lot of money. But it was just $23 million. Had she not said nothing, this project would probably been financed and they would have been almost on their way of completing it. Because again, let's go pull it back a little bit. This was supposed to be done. Utility construction started in 2018, and she again in March 2018 said, no. The stuff that happened in 2017 and all the planning and all the relocation work and all the stuff that got started, let's stop it. Now, there was a report saying that had they stopped the project completely, they'd lose a ton of money. Money that you can't recoup, it's gone. You've invested quite a bit at this point. You don't want to stop it because you're going to lose a ton of money. That didn't matter. So during that review that took a while, costs kept going up and up and up and up and up and up. So then she announced in 2019, January 2019, that the project would be revived if they found the funds to cover the entire $286 million cost. And just, I think yesterday or the day before, she gave an announcement that they will continue the construction of the city center connector. Now, this is 1.3 miles long, and it's going to cost $286 million. And now it's expected to be completed in 2025, 5 years after it was supposed to be open. Now, here's what's going to happen. It's going to cost more than 286 because things change very quickly here. 286 is not going to be the final number. And then when people who are opposed to this type of stuff, they're going to use this as ammunition and say it's never on time and it's never within the budget. It's because you have the wrong people in place that make decisions and they don't know what they're talking about. Even though the business community who gets ignored, not only in Seattle, do you have small businesses, medium businesses, and big businesses that get ignored, and they say, you know, this is a good idea. The people who are paying the city to run, as well as taxpayers, not only are they saying, yes, please, please, that happens here in Tacoma too, where businesses will talk and no one listens. So it's not as bad here as it is, even close, as it is up there in Seattle. And so you have a situation now where it's $286 million. Now let's look at Tacoma. Tacoma built what it's called, its Sound Transit calls it a light rail line, even though it's a streetcar, same one that they use down in Portland. And when the first segment, which we're still operating on, was built back in, when was that? 2003. It was 1.6 miles. So it's that the segment that we have here is bigger than what it would take, just a little bit bigger than what it would take to complete the loop, the bottom section, the city connector section for Seattle. Okay? But we're not talking about old stuff. And we're not talking about a difference in locations. Like, this isn't Colorado or San Francisco or LA or Bowling Green, Kentucky, someplace far away. This is just 30 miles to the south. Same type of topography, same type of earthquake issues, and really and truly, building costs here are the same thing. Same. So let's clear that out. Houses may cost more in Seattle, but I guarantee you, if you do a remodel here and do a remodel in Seattle, same price. I used to be with a company that did remodels. Same price. Okay? Land might be a little bit cheaper, but keep in mind, they're not acquiring land as much. This isn't like Sound Transit that's building the light rail system and they have to buy land and do all. This is all in the middle of the street. This is taxpayer funded money. Sound Transit, which has built the Link light rail system down here. So the streetcar that you see running right now, they built that. We don't have the ability to have our own Department of Transportation like Seattle does. And they're building a 2.4 mile extension, which has been going pretty smoothly. There was a time when businesses were a little upset because obviously people couldn't access, their businesses. And again, small business are operating on a razor thin margin. This isn't Amazon or Vulcan or Expedia or any of that. These are mom and pops. So I get their frustration. So this in Tacoma, this 2.4 mile system is being constructed. And let me see if I can find the cost. Hold on. The cost is here somewhere. Give you an idea. Let's see. This is talking about old stuff. Because here there was a big issue too when it was being constructed. And at the time, because this was a $50 million deal. But again, this was back in early 2000s. So it's $50 million to complete the 1.6 mile line. And it does have dedicated lanes in certain areas. There are other areas where it kind of runs into the street. But to be honest with you, the areas along Commerce Street is more like our own transit mall. So it runs in the street there. It shares traffic with buses and cars. But it's a very short section. Most of it is on its own track. The new extension is more in the road system than what the initial line was. But back in the day, it was about $50 million. And the big complaint was they wanted it to run along Pack Avenue. You know, the focus was Pack Avenue. The problem with Tacoma, unlike Seattle, and I give Seattle kudos, is Seattle likes to spread the beauty around. They like to spread around improvements. Tacoma is narrow focused. Everything is right there in Point Ruston. Everything's along 6th Avenue. Everything is along Pack Avenue. They don't spread it around downtown. And so they wanted it to go down Pack Avenue. Sound Transit's like, that's not a good idea. For one, it's going to probably increase the amount of construction time, and it's definitely going to increase the amount that it's going to take to build the system. And it's going to make things a lot more complicated because as they knew they were going to have an extension and expansion, and if they would have continued down Pack Avenue, they could still go up on Stadium and then hang over into Hilltop. But they said that it would cost a little bit more and it would be a little bit more complicated. So Commerce Street was considered to be the less controversial place because you didn't have as many businesses. There wouldn't have been as much disruption. And they thought this would have been a better, faster way to do it. And so finally people said, okay, fine, we'll leave it in your hands and we'll do it. Now, it rose a little bit because the cost of the streetcars. Sound Transit says we want to have these low floor streetcars like they have in Portland, not the higher floor where you have to step up. They've already had the platforms done, everything. They wanted it to be a lower floor situation, so it rose by $12 million. So the initial completion, cars and all, 3 streetcars, $77 million back in 2003. Okay? Now, the Hilltop Line. This is where it gets interesting. And when you talk about Tacoma and... Let me find it. Hold on one second. I should have had this one. And it's not even on here. Hold on. I'll get it. So, the Hilltop Line, 2.4 miles is being constructed. And the cost to do so, let me see if I can find it real quick. It's going to basically, there's going to be 6 new locations, 6 new stations. 1 station is going to be relocated, 2.4 miles. It's going to open next year, right? Let's see, let me find it. Hold on. Bear with me. No, that's not what I'm looking for. That's not what I'm looking for. Hold on one second. Let me pause so that you guys aren't waiting forever. Hold on. Okay, I'm back. So the cost to build this 2.4 mile expansion streetcar, which is, again, we're not talking like something that's completely different or anything like that. It's building it in the road system. Utilities have to be relocated. They have to buy new streetcars that are completely from a different company. They're much more technically challenged They run on batteries, so sometimes they can drop the arm if they wanted to, and they can run for a while without any sort of wires. Even with that, and I think they bought like 6 streetcars, the cost for a 2.4-mile extension plus all those streetcars is $217 million. Now, not only is the line double the size of the city center streetcar, we have hills and everything else too. It's going over a small bridge, because coming off of where it ends, building it up through Stadium, there's a bridge it has to cover, has to go over, and it's going down Hilltop. And yet this, with even more streetcars, relocating a station and building 6 more actual stations, it is $217 million. And in Seattle, the city center streetcar with its 1.3-mile construction is $286 million. Now, it doesn't make sense that a system that's double the size in every way is cheaper than this little tiny 1.3-mile jog. But it is what it is. It doesn't make sense, but it is what it is. Now, the smarter thing, and someone mentioned this, Seattle did have the waterfront streetcar line. It even had a stop up in Chinatown. And yet they destroyed it because of a park. The actual maintenance facility and rail barn was actually over there in Sculpture Park. And it was a stupid thing, in my opinion, to destroy that for a park. It was stupid. Because that park, and I know why the park was built and all the things behind it, but it could have left that there and still had the waterfront streetcar line. It was a single track system. It used the old heritage streetcars. They were green and white. And in a certain section, it was double track so that they can pass each other, and they can still continue. You had 2 cars. I think they had 3 total or more. And it went along the waterfront. It was the Benson waterfront. What's it called? George Benson Waterfront Streetcar Line. It was 1.6 miles long. So same length of what we currently have in Tacoma. Already completed everything. All they had to do was technically, if they wanted to, buy 3 streetcars that were modern, similar to what we have here in Tacoma, for $12 million back in the day if they wanted to, and they could have actually used this 9-station, 1.6-mile streetcar line and leave it be. Much cheaper option than what they've done in terms of the South Lake Union and all that. And the reason why I said they should have left it and it was stupid to do this and close it down because of the park is because of the simple fact that Sound Transit, remember them, they're building a massive, robust, overbuilt system in downtown Seattle. And I say it's overbuilt because of the simple fact that there's a lot of things they could have done beforehand before what they're doing now. They're going to have to build a whole new tunnel and all this other stuff in order to accommodate Tacoma, even though they knew that they were going to come to Tacoma. But that's a different video for a different time. The fact is that the Link light rail system, which is a true light rail system, and their subway line and all that, literally connects the areas of importance. Because when you look at the Link light rail system, and you look at the map, and they've actually added new stations just a few days ago. They've done their expansions up north and all of that, and I think those are great because there's a lot of people that are up there. But if you look at this, you have the ones of importance, the stations of importance. You have International Chinatown District, Pioneer Square, and there's University Street, but we're not worried about University Street, right? And then Westlake. So you have those that I'm going to focus on, right? That we're talking about downtown. You have those that I'm going to focus on. Now, what's important is I mentioned earlier that The George Benson waterfront streetcar line ran right there in Chinatown. In fact, the station is still there. And it ran right there and along the waterfront. And you could have technically built somewhat of a small loop. You could have built a loop that would have actually made this a little bit better than what it is. Because if you look at the old waterfront streetcar map, which it still does exist, okay, it still does exist. It would have actually allowed for you to build somewhat of a loop that would have connected these places along this area. And you could have connected it into, because it already was in the International District, you could have connected it up to where the light rail line is today. You could have made an easy little loop. Right? Because it literally went the length of downtown. So it kind of formed like a little bit of an L, backwards L. And you could have literally, that would have covered all of downtown in terms of the streetcar. And it ends on Broad Street, roughly. You could have connected a line that went from Broad Street up and would have continued from International District up. Forget the street that it's on. And it would have connected to the present day light rail system that we have in Seattle. The Chinatown one wouldn't even have to be connected. You could have actually formed a system within downtown to where you have where you wouldn't have redundancy. Now you have redundancy because people are saying, what's the point? Because literally you can get off the station right now in the International District or Pioneer Square or any of those places, and you're able to walk throughout downtown. It's not a big deal. You're able to do that. But the way that they're doing this system with the streetcar is kind of having redundancy that is not needed, especially when you add up the total cost of this. $286 million for a system that really was already done to begin with. They didn't even tear up the tracks. Some of the stations are gone. Some of the old streetcars, I think, are still in a barn somewhere, maybe. It doesn't make any sense. So now you have a system that people are saying, yeah, it's needed. We definitely need this connected because of mistakes that were made. The old streetcar line shouldn't have been ripped up. If anything, they should have replaced maybe the cars. You can argue that back and forth all day long. The old streetcar line should have existed. And it would have been able to connect people all along, because that area is where people take the cruises, all of that. That could have all been connected. But the reason why I think that Seattle went the way that they did was because, one, money talks. So Sculpture Park was going to be a given thing. And two, I think they wanted to be like Portland. Portland has kicked Seattle's butt in a lot of areas when it comes to transportation. Not in other areas. But when it comes to mass transit, Portland has gotten it right. They didn't do this expensive underground tunnel thing. And some people will say that them building it on top of the street has limited their system quite a bit because they can only have 2 light rail vehicles at a time. Their blocks are pretty short. So if they had 3, it would be blocking intersections. That's why you only see 2 of them. And traffic holds them up quite a bit. But if you look at the network that Portland has, it's pretty robust. You can get anywhere you want to go. And then you have streetcars that run over that connects into smaller areas. And so I think that what Seattle wanted to do is basically say, look, we can do the same thing, but we're going to do it even better. And we're going to make it even bigger. And we're going to try to form our own little loop. And it just isn't, it's not the way that it should be. If you look at Tacoma, it's actually been done correctly. The streetcar line runs from the Dome District. The Dome District is the transit hub of all of Pierce County. It's actually the biggest transportation, not the busiest. I'll take that back. It is the most robust transit space in the entire state. More so than what you see up in Seattle. The bus hub is there. Amtrak's hub is there. The Sounder train station's there. You have the Link light rail system, the streetcar that we have. It's there. Massive parking garages are there. You can catch a Greyhound bus there. Soon you're going to be able, when they finally build it, the Link light rail system from Seattle down here is going to be right in that area. There's no other place in the state that has that much concentration in one area. So Sound Transit said, you know what we're going to do is build that little light rail system from the Dome District, which has Tacoma Dome, and it's pretty popular. There's a lot of concerts. And we're going to build it into the city. Because along Pack Avenue back in the day, it was just in dire straits. And so it was kind of saying like, hey, I know it's kind of a track going to nowhere, but we have bigger plans. So as they built this, slowly Tacoma has grown because it is saying this is a great investment. Today, we're seeing mid-rises being built all along that line. If anything, a small, tiny version of Portland is here in Tacoma, the way that it was built. So now they're going to continue to add that. It goes through the main core of downtown. So a lot of Pack Avenue and then into Commerce. Not a lot of Pack Avenue, but some of Pack Avenue and then Commerce. And then it's going to basically go down on MLK. So it's connecting all these little neighborhoods, Hilltop, Stadium District, downtown, some of these other places, the Dome District. If you want to talk about neighborhoods being connected, that is connected, right? That's how you do it. Here, when you look at this, it's literally connecting some of the bigger areas to other areas, but it just doesn't really make a lot of sense. You see what I'm saying? Like it makes sense to the point of where you want to complete it, so you have a complete line. But it doesn't make sense in terms of what they did in the past, getting rid of one streetcar system that was really good, and then having redundancy between, and it's and similar. I think there's redundancies with Sound Transit down here when it finally does come, because we have the big commuter line, the Sounder train, and then we also will be getting the Link light rail system, and so it's going to be going. Both of them are going to be going into Seattle and into the King Street stop. So you can count that as redundancy too. The difference is the Link light rail will be much more frequent. But I think that's something people can kind of deal with, because it goes beyond just here. It goes down to South Tacoma and eventually to DuPont, the Sounder commuter train. So that's a little different, but this is complete redundancy. It just doesn't make any sort of sense, especially when you're looking at the price tag. It doesn't make any sort of sense. Had she never said anything, this would have been completed. So who knows if the Broadway streetcar is going to be completed. That still, Seattle has more that they're wanting to do. They want to add the Broadway streetcar line. And they said the project's expected to cost $28 million. Right? It's just basically, it's a half a mile. It's going to extend the First Hill streetcar a half a mile. And they're thinking it's going to cost $28 million. We know that's not going to be the case. It's going to be probably double that, if not more. And so this is kind of the situation. So my view is that this project should have never been halted. A. B, I think that the system could have been a whole lot better and probably complete had they did this completely different. You could have had a system that would have even went into Amazon's campus. You could have had that, right? But given all the future extensions of the Link light rail system and how it's going to be working, how it's going to go to West Seattle and all these other places and the different tunnel systems that they're going to do, really, is the streetcar system in Seattle, the way it's laid out now, is it really needed? It's kind of pointless to argue that now. But to me, there should have been better planning done between SDOT, the city, and Sound Transit. Anyhow, what do I know? Be sure to join the Discord down in the description box below. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and comment. Until next time, I will see you. Take care.